The Team VVV Awards 2018, sponsored by Ben Green Racing and Thrustmaster. Hello viewers and welcome to our final podcast for the Team VVV Awards 2018. Today it's the big one, Racing Game of the Year 2018, and what a difficult decision it's going to be balancing all of this out. Of course, I'm joined by Martin.
Hello.
And Kevin.
Hi guys.
Chaps, we're going to talk about these titles in just a moment. Team VVV Racing Game of the Year 2018. The nominations are Forza Motorsport 7, F1 2017, WRC 7, Project Cars 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Gran Turismo Sport, and Dirt 4. So, wide selection of racing games there. Many of them there have already won awards in our various categories already. And so now we start our discussion on where we end up. It's been a very challenging year, I think, for the racing gaming genre. You know, in terms of ticking boxes and perfect games, it's very difficult to pinpoint perfect games. But we have to kick off. We're going to go through them one at a time. Forza Motorsport 7. A chat about Forza Motorsport from you first, Kevin.
Yeah, so I mean, it was, it made improvements on the previous titles in the series. You know, you think back to Forza Motorsport 5, it was lacking sorely in content. Both in terms of tracks and cars. So they've improved it in 6 and 7. They've really sort of stepped it up, haven't they? They've added more and more cars. They have an incredible car selection, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts. And, a decent amount of tracks. We'd like to see a few more tracks added on, but, it's reasonably decent compared to earlier titles, earlier this generation. But, with Forza, it's sometimes it's almost like a love or hate thing with Forza. You either love it or you hate it based on that handling. For some people, it just doesn't quite do it in terms of simulation, whereas others love the game. So I guess it all depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for an arcade fun experience, it certainly does tick those boxes. And it has that incredible career mode, which, titles like GT Sport comes up short. So if you're looking for that progression, that career mode, that journey, Forza Motorsport 7 certainly does tick those boxes. Martin,
your thoughts on Forza as well?
I think for car enthusiasts, Forza Motorsport 7 is definitely a standout, purely based on the car selection alone. As we pointed out in our Best Vehicle Selection Award, no other game can touch Forza Motorsport 7, just based on its car selection alone. There's lots and lots of cars that have made their racing game debut in Forza 7, like as we discussed, the Porsche 911 GT2 RS. Like Kevin said, it's got a very vast career mode. I think definitely for car enthusiasts, it's definitely a very solid title. But there are other areas where we still feel like there's still room for improvement. As we touched on a little bit, the car handling still doesn't quite appeal to hardcore simulation fans or arcade lovers either. It's just sort of trying to reach that middle ground, but not quite there yet. Visually as well, it's a great showcase of the Xbox One X hardware. It really is the showcase title for the console, I should add. Running in 4K resolution and 60 frames per second is no small feat, I think Forza 7, it does have some very commendable achievements. But on the whole, I just felt like it played it a bit too safe. 7 games into the series, you expect a little bit more
innovation,
a little bit more of an evolution.
Yeah,
I think it should have revolutionized the series a bit more. Is what I'm trying to say.
It was more, it was more of an evolution rather than a revolution. And I think that on a new console, and we knowing the incredible powers of Turn 10, magic powers, I think we would have liked to have seen a bit more, but perhaps we'll see that on the next generation now. There may have been some limitations in terms of time and transition. It's funny when you talk about handling, for me, Forza Motorsport with a wheel, I just can't get on with it at all. I find that it's just it doesn't work for me. With a control pad, I find it 100 times more fun. And I speak to some of my friends that play various different games, and they say to me, love playing Forza Motorsport. I've really got into Forza Motorsport. It handles really well with a controller. And I think that though the handling for me isn't necessarily simulating the real driving experience, they've certainly got a system in the controller that works well. And in terms of mass market appeal, that's the priority. It's not the wheel.
That's the key point, isn't it? They're going for more mass market appeal. They want to get up there with Gran Turismo numbers. And how do you do that? Well, you create a game that a lot of people get on with. So Yeah, so I mean, we've seen an evolution of the handling, haven't we? It started off life as a simulation. I mean, I remember going from Gran Turismo to Forza Motorsport 2 and just being blown away with it, because you had this incredible depth to the handling model, and of course you could see all the various technical stuff going on, your tire temperatures, your brakes, etc., live while you're racing, and that really blew my mind. And the fact that you could take off the assists and over rev the engine, actually damage the engine in Forza Motorsport 2, I believe it was. My tricked out Lotus Elise with an engine swap, I think it was, and I think no, it was a Lotus Elan I had. I loved driving that with a massive engine you could whack in there, so it gives you that sort of flexibility and that sort of fun to it. You could change things, and other games don't really do that. And it had that level of simulation that's just sort of gone away with every sort of Forza title from maybe 4 onwards. So they're trying to appeal, like you say, to the mass market, which is understandable. They want to get up there with Gran Turismo Sport. But you're going to anger some fans along the way naturally, because you're not going to keep everyone happy. But I think they're getting to the point now where they know who they want to be and which gamers they want to appeal to. So we have to get on board basically with Forza. Otherwise, perhaps it might not be a game for you if you're more sort of simulation inclined.
Sure. I mean, the handling's changed a lot. I mean, Forza Motorsport 4 would have been Racing Game of the Year at the time, and I loved Forza Motorsport 4. Loved that game.
That was the pinnacle of the series, I'd argue.
Yes, absolutely. For me, it was a clear winner in terms of pinnacle. It brought everything together: great graphics, great handling, great cars. But they did make a change in the handling in the middle of Forza 4, which is a bit like what they've done to WRC. It was handling amazingly well, and then people complained that it didn't have, I don't know, some 900-degree steering option. And then they put the 900-degree steering option in there. And I might be wrong on the degrees on that. I can't remember the exact degrees. But it just changed the handling entirely, and I set my wheel up to work with that, and it just didn't feel the same. I didn't get the same feel of the car, and it was never the same. And then when Forza Motorsport 5 came out, I remember turning traction control off and on and turning them off and realizing some of these cars are just undrivable with traction control off. And my lap times were 10 seconds a lap slower because I couldn't get out of the corners. It
falls into the trap, doesn't it, where they think that simulation means harder.
Because
in recent games, if you turned on simulation steering, you would get a greasy weasel. You wouldn't be able to control it as well as you should. It should be intuitive. It should be fairly easy to control. If you really want to simulate the real world, we can all drive cars. We don't crash every 5 minutes. So it's one of those games that just fell into that trap of adding extra difficulty when it doesn't necessarily need to. So
that's right.
It's very much a case of turning off simulation steering if you want more of a simulation.
Also, I mean, something else for me that's changed a bit in Forza, I find, and maybe this is just me, but I find the circuits are very flat, very wide, very flat. And I think the Maple Valley remake has really it's
horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Herman Tilt, as I say, and it's utterly soulless. It's nothing like the original Maple Valley, which was a joy to drive, and they've made it easier, and it's flatter and wider and soulless.
Some people complain as well. Some of the real world license tracks aren't that accurate in Forza 7. They have a lot of inaccuracies.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, details like that, when you consider the budget and resource returns, and let's look at that just for a second. I've found that the change has happened since they've gone to the biannual franchise. They've almost, like when they had sort of
this generation, in other words.
Yeah, this generation, when they've gone with, like, I think Forza 6 had the puddles and the wet, like canned wet condition. And I thought, well, when you know where the puddles are, you just drive around them. There's nothing random about that. The point of what's difficult with wet weather is when you transition from wet dry to wet to dry. That's the challenge, because the conditions are changing, your braking points are changing, and is your car set up right? When you start a race in rain and it stays at an equal level of rain, there's no challenge to that. And I found that it was almost like you could see the committee deciding what should be. Well, this year we're going to include that, and then next time you can include the weather, and then the time after that you can include this thing. Whereas I always felt the Forza were just trying to make the best game they could, and now they're staggering those features. And it's certainly been more pronounced in Forza, because at least with Forza Horizon, they can do Forza Horizon in a different country with completely different ideas.
With Forza Motorsport, to its limits.
Yeah, with Forza Motorsport, you're tied to racetracks and certain cars. So, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, Forza Motorsport has the pedigree to be the greatest racer ever. And I think that at the moment they're certainly, they're sort of following a very safe path. But I look forward to when Turn 10 can really sort of forge ahead with its next generation of technology, and that's coming. I know it's coming. I think the next Forza Motorsport might be something special, but certainly for this one, Forza Motorsport 7 is a solid title, and of course the winner of our best vehicle selection as well, always well curated by Turn 10. But moving on then to F1 2017. F1 2017 was again a strange one. It was announced quite late. We saw it at E3. They revealed that it was going to have classic cars in there, which was nice. We also learned at E3 by no announcement that it was going to have different variations on the circuits. But what we found out, actually, sort of the week before the game came out, was the game had this whole sort of management mode to it, essentially, building your car and where you invest and your technology and everything else. It had sort of layers of depth. So not only were they building this Formula One game, improving on it year on year, but they built this whole package to back it up as well. And it turned out to be a spectacular Formula One game. I would go so far as to say it was one of our highest rated reviews of the year on Team VVV, probably the best F1 game ever made. It really is very good indeed. And certainly Codemasters have, it's taken years to get to this level, but they've now got a fan base, a following, and something that looks very authentic. And even in the replays as well, as we said, Codemasters have done a good job with the replays. I will say, God knows how they're going to handle the Halo next year. It's got to be a pain, isn't it, bolting that onto the car. From whatever camera view you use, you're going to have a Halo in the way, but I won't get into that moaning. I guess, firstly, Martin, your thoughts on F1 2017?
Yeah, for F1 fans, I think it's really a return to form. I remember F1 2015 was a bit of a disappointment. Visually, it was very, very quite breathtakingly beautiful, actually, I'd go far to say, for F1 2015. But the handling was lackluster. The career mode was non-existent. They've really sort of listened to feedback. And I think it's really come to fruition for F1 2017. Definitely one of the surprises of the year, because as we keep saying, annually licensed games, we don't always have that much expectation for them. But in this case, it was a genuine surprise. Like you say as well, we've got the return of classic cars as well, although they were a little bit restricted. I think they were tied to career events, weren't they?
Mm. They were a bit restricted in the way they were used.
I know you were a big fan of content in F1 2013.
I just kind of felt that the classic content wasn't used enough, and there wasn't enough variety. It just, there wasn't before in 2013, and there isn't enough this time. I wanted more classic cars in there. I wanted to be able to do something more with them. It's sort of, we've got a few classic cars, and that's all we can get. But of course, the classic cars, when you can't have any of the branding on there, that's an issue. I also think it's a shame that you can't have the branding on there in terms of, even if you're over 18, we're sort of, I don't know, whitewashing sort of F1's past in a way. And I think it's a challenge. And I know it's a great challenge for Codemasters to bring the licenses together. I'm aware that it's a very challenging process, because there's a lot of companies that don't exist now that were around in the 80s, for example. So finding who owns the rights to every element on those cars can be quite a challenge, and one car at a time in that way. But there's definitely ways around that. And I think, I suppose in a way, we look at it from, you've got the game developers which say it's really hard licensing this content. And then you've got consumers who say, I don't care how hard it is to license content. I just buy a game and I just want more. And I think they've got a lot that's very positive. I think Codemasters have done a tremendous job with Formula One. I really do feel, they've had ups and downs. I loved F1 2013 a lot. I think the series had a bit of a mix in 2014. Obviously, it wasn't released on the Xbox One and PS4, and in 2015 it was. And though it was good to look at, had a few issues, and of course the PC launched with some issues.
No
F1
career mode as well. So
exactly. It came back to form a bit in 2016 and really built on that in 2017 as well. So certainly, they're on a good curve now, Codemasters, and I really do feel it's one of the sort of big titles of the year in that sense. So F1 2017, again, a worthy contender for Racing Game of the Year and one of our top rated titles. Next up, of course, WRC7, winner of 2 awards already: Best Surprise of 2017 and Best Off-Road Game. Again, I think we've said pretty much all we need to say in terms of WRC7 through the chat. But I think just to reiterate, really, it's not the complete package in terms of some elements could be better. There's a lot to work on and build on. But in terms of official WRC games, one of the best WRC games in years, isn't it, Martin?
Yeah, certainly I'd say the most intense rally game I played in years. As we keep saying, it's just all these little improvements they made really add up to make a substantial difference compared to previous official WRC titles. You've got the more realistic handling, so it's much more challenging, much more powerful cars to drive as well. And then when you combine that with the redesigned stages, it really does demand your concentration. It just really captures that intensity of rallying much better than we ever anticipated. But there's definitely a well-deserved winner of the best surprise of the year. That's for sure.
Yeah, Kevin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like we said before, WRC7 was a great surprise. Fantastic handling. You really felt the weight of the car. You felt like you could put it where you want to put it, which was fantastic. Stages were amazing to look at. You had the longer stages, of course, which were so intense, like you said. And yeah, it was just a nice overall package. I mean, could they do more with the career mode? Yeah, absolutely. We want to see more innovation next time around. But because they added so much in terms of improved visuals, sound, and handling, that certainly was enough to warrant this title. But we want to see more innovation for the career mode in the next title. But it'll be interesting to see where they go with that.
More innovation and basically more rallies. I just wanted more content in the game, more stages, more content. It left me just wanting more, but appreciating the detail of what they put in there. And I think in that sense, it's again a huge step forward. Like F1, it's another official brand. It has its own official esport, and I feel also that the esport, the pressure from the real brand holders in terms of esports is certainly helping to invest and improve these games and bring them to the level they need to be for esports at that level. Great result from WRC7. Now, next up is Project Cars 2. And Project Cars 2 on paper is, well, incredible, really. Amazing racing game. I guess Project Cars 2, again, you look at the range of options, the breadth of content in there, absolutely fantastic. Martin, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I think for motorsport enthusiasts in particular, it really is the complete package. Such an incredible variety of racing disciplines that, frankly, is unrivaled on the for current generation games. It's by no means perfect. I think we've addressed some of the issues we have with the title, but we've really got to give Slightly Mad Studios some credit. I think out of all the titles released this year, it's, I would say, the most innovative, and I think it's the one title that really moves the genre forward. We need more innovation in the genre. We need more hardcore racing simulations coming to consoles from PC. So that's in that regard, Project Cars 2 is a very important title, and on the whole, I think it does deliver. We keep saying it's not perfect, but frankly, none of the games on this list are perfect. So for me, it was definitely one of the standouts. There are better looking games from 2017, but it's no game comes close to the amount of content for one thing in Project Cars 2. Which I think is quite an achievement when you consider it's going against the big titans in the genre, Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport. So the fact it actually surpasses some areas of those titles is a big achievement
as well, isn't it?
Exactly. When you look at the weather effects, for example, alone, incredible technology powering the Live Track 3.0. I think above all as well, it really put the career mode, for example, really puts you into the life of a racing driver like no other game.
Mm-hmm.
Has that sort of really good sense of progression as you go through each different discipline. So yeah, for me, definitely a standout because, like I said, it really innovates the genre, which I think is a key area.
Absolutely. Kevin, your thoughts on Project Cars 2?
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? I mean, Project Cars 1 came out, had numerous bugs, and it fixed some of those bugs, but of course some of those bugs still remain today. But we was hoping for a more polished product with Project Cars 2, and I just feel that maybe they've just made it a little bit too complex to deliver a game that's is 95% bug free, because no game is truly bug free, is it? But
I should have released it a bit earlier, personally.
Yeah, I think
later. I mean, not earlier.
maybe 6 months more development time, perhaps, would have
Yeah.
been. I mean, they did patch in some ice physics, I believe, wasn't it? Post-launch, so it wasn't actually quite finished for launch, for example. So it feels a little bit rushed out, didn't? And it was like it was announced very early on, wasn't it? Not far after Project Cars 1, which
that was not well received.
So I just feel it's a little bit rushed out, but overall, I think it's a very solid game. It does have some issues, of course, as do all these games, but I think overall it provides the most authentic racing experience, and possibly the best career, certainly up there with the likes of Forza 7 and I guess F1 2017 as well. It does sort of provide you with that, like you say, Martin, it puts you in the shoes, doesn't it, of a racing driver, and that's what we want for our racing games. And I don't think any other game quite does it like Project Cars 2, because you have your race engineer that comes on. You've got, it's just so authentic compared to the other titles, and
it captures that race day atmosphere perfectly.
Yeah, it does, and it's so flexible as well. And we'll talk about this in shortly, but it has a flexibility that just embarrasses these other titles. It has that sort of sandbox, doesn't it? You can do anything you want to do, and for that reason, it's sort of endlessly enjoyable. And you can come up with some truly bizarre combinations of track, weather, and cars if you wish. It's one of those things you can really go bonkers with, or you can set up close to the real world racing series as well. So it's you can do what you want with Project Cars 2, and that's what I really like about it.
I know what you mean. I love its customizability.
Yeah.
I want to race on this track with this number of laps against this number of opponents, and you can just do it. It's surprising how many games don't have that flexibility.
Yeah.
In a single player mode.
No, it does have. I mean, they have listened to their community, and they've clearly developed it upon that. And I think when you look at it this year and this year's awards, I mean, they've been nominated in quite a few categories as well. It's definitely one of our biggest nominated titles. Best audio, for example, in the sense that they've got so many types of car, well curated list, great audio in a lot of those cars as well. It does give you that feeling of being in there. Best environment selection, the scale of the game, the amount of tracks, the day and the night, the weather conditions, the time of year. I mean, it's astronomical, the amount of data that they've put into this game. And in that sense, it's the scale of Project Cars 2 is unmatched. And as I say, it's sort of moving the genre forward. I think Project Cars 1 was important because it brought simulation to consoles and proves that it could be successful. That paved the way for other titles.
Yes.
But you also need titles like this to sort of move forward the whole genre. So in that sense, it really has been a surprise this year in many respects. It's come out slightly sooner, I think, than it should have. And I think in that sense that there are some elements where it's a bit rough around the edges. As I understand, some of the online, there's still some issues on that sort of thing. I think handling wise, I think we had, controller handling still isn't there yet on a lot of the cars. Some of the cars don't handle well as they should. It doesn't matter how good your physics model is, if it doesn't apply consistently and if it doesn't apply to the controller, then you've got problems there. So there's certainly, but again, like we say on this list, nothing is perfect. This isn't just about everything being perfect in a game. It's about pulling those elements together, and as I say, it is very competitive, and they have moved the genre forward. But I'm moving on to a game that probably is perfect, is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, it's quite funny. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, winner of our Best Handheld award. Well, I mean, what can you say about this game? It is the perfect racing game in many respects. It's one of the top-rated games of VVV this year. I think if you're going to make a Mario Kart game, take all the best elements of a previous Mario Kart, add more elements, mix it all together and optimize your hardware. This is a game that is tuned and honed, and it's solid, rock solid. And if every game was as solid as Mario Kart, our conversation would be very different, I can tell you. But either way, Martin, you've played the most Mario Kart by far. Let's have a little chat about it again. Why not?
Yeah, I have to say Mario Kart 8 is probably some of the most fun I had actually in a racing game last year. Just an incredibly solid package, I mean, obviously Mario Kart has its reputation. You expect a good quality experience in Mario Kart, but it just surprised me because obviously it was a port. In reality, it is a port of an old Wii U title, but the fact they actually went that extra mile, improved the graphics, they added extra modes, new characters. It wasn't just a simple cash grab, and it really did showcase the Nintendo Switch hardware as well, especially in handheld mode. No, I have to say, I did struggle to find fault with this game, to be honest, when I reviewed it last year. It really is as close to perfection as you can get in a Mario Kart title. It came at the right time as well, because obviously we've seen a bit of a decline lately of the arcade racing genre. Last year was really much focused on simulation titles, GT, Project Cars 2, Forza, etc. So it really did feel like a breath of fresh air. So it came at the right time as well. But yeah, I mean, it is incredible as well to see it in motion running on handheld. Like it delivers on the promise, I'd say, of console quality gaming on the go.
So Mario Kart, certainly a worthy contender. However you look at the racing gaming genre, what they've done what they can with what they have, and in that sense they've done an incredible job. But moving on to Gran Turismo Sport. Gran Turismo Sport, again, like Project Cars 2, one of the big comings of the year, delayed by a year, sort of last minute, in fact, to add a lot more content to it. We saw it originally, early 2016, and I was quite disappointed. I was quite critical about it, actually. And I was consistently critical about the game in terms of development, saying it needed more. And eventually, when it was first released, it wasn't. Again, it still was nice, and I was enjoying it, but it wasn't everything I wanted it to be. And then nearer to Christmas, they released some of the leagues, and I just really got into it. I was playing it with a controller, I was playing it with a wheel, and I actually found that with a controller, I was putting in lap times that were near enough consistent to my wheel. I mean, I have more fun with the wheel, and I enjoy the wheel, but it was just so much fun to play. And it just showed me, this is a Gran Turismo game. It's when you get the AI in there that it really just starts to bring it back in that way. And I had a lot of fun. And, I think the online aspect has been, in a way, I still kind of wish it was a proper Gran Turismo game. I think that's the only thing that sort of, it's got so many good components to it. That I kind of wished it was more, but obviously it's already won a few awards this year. It's won best graphics, because there's no doubting outstanding graphics, outstanding lighting on a PS4 console. Yes, they're in-house development. They have better technology and support and funding than anyone else out there. One would expect that, but they delivered in that regard. They have best handling. In that sense, and again, it was a consistency, a solidity across the different cars. There was a consistency to them, and together with the controller, I felt that it was perfectly playable and worked really well. And then, of course, best online multiplayer. This was a key award, and Gran Turismo had to win this award. I think had it been a bad online experience, this game would already be out of business. But the rate of work from Polyphony in terms of updating the game has been quite amazing since its launch, and they really have been working to build the game and improve it. And it's actually improved quite radically in just a few months after launch, right up to Christmas as well. But Martin, your thoughts on Gran Turismo Sport?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me, I have to say. Yes, it has its good qualities. Like I said, graphically, absolutely amazing, especially on PS4 Pro as well. It has that sort of level of polish to it that few racing games managed to achieve. Also, the online multiplayer, we talked about Project Cars 2 sort of moving the genre forward. I think GT Sports online multiplayer is quite groundbreaking on consoles, at least. It's sort of applying that iRacing style experience to consoles. So I think that, they deserve credit for that, absolutely. But if you're not interested in the online component, which I'm personally not, I don't play online multiplayer that often, it's really lacking in other areas. That I just feel like for a Gran Turismo game, that core fundamental experience is missing. There's no getting away from the fact the car and track selection is subpar. Yes, they're releasing free updates quite regularly, quite substantial updates every month, which is good. But there's just that nagging feeling that content should have been in the game in the first place. So to me, it still feels a bit like a Steam Early Access game in the way they're updating it, which is a shame. I I just think overall, I feel that for a series with the legacy that Gran Turismo has, we really should expect more. Particularly when you consider as well, it's been 4 or 5 years in development. Having said that, it has nice menus. In all seriousness, the level of polish in every aspect, the graphics, the menus, it's just a really nice place to be in. I could spend hours just looking at those well-detailed car models. And let's not forget the virtual museum as well. That's a unique feature, should we say?
They did put a lot of work into scapes, didn't they? I have to admit, I didn't. I haven't put that much effort into that side of things. I know they love it, and it really is something that, I remember when we went to the first presentation, and I was sitting there with a couple of other YouTubers, and I just remember looking around and looking at them like, it's all about photo mode. Well, who cares about that?
A bit too much focus on that, didn't they?
They did in the initial presentation. It went on for ages, like how important. And you could see that the car companies love all this. Oh, look how our car's going to look. Look how our car's going to look. But in reality, it's all about how it drives and how it plays. And I think that's what's more important. But like you say, a lot of potential. But is it fair to call them the biggest racing developer in the world? With the most financial resource of any racing developer, I think it's fair to say. The most car company support in terms of the official motor industry. It's very close to Forza, but I would still say Gran Turismo still has that heritage there and the connection with the FIA. One would expect more from an entire package in terms of modes and everything else. So it's a game that delivers in what it does, but it's still got a long way to go before it's the full service package that I think it aims to be.
I guess you could argue too the Vision GT program's quite innovative as well. The unique concept cars that are exclusive to the game. But again, like we said before, they do take up far too much of the entire car list.
Exactly. Yeah, much like Scapes, it's Marmite, isn't it? You love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
So
it's innovative but overbearing. It's funny. I always liked concept cars years ago, but I just found that Vision GT. I remember I interviewed Kaz a couple of years ago, and I actually asked him. I said in that interview, I said, "Why all this investment in Vision GT at the time? Where's the benefit for everybody? Where's the benefit for the car companies?" And it was I can't remember what he said now, but yeah, I mean, it was. I did ask him straight. I was very sort of surprised at the focus given to cars that aren't real, in that sense, fake cars rather than real cars and the real history of the sport in that sense. And but there's no doubt about it. I mean, Kazunori loves his cars. He loves the history of the cars.
You can see that in the virtual museum. You can learn so much history about the motor industry. But then, of course, I'm browsing the cars. I think I wish these cars were actually in the game.
Yes, I mean they've got a lot to do, haven't they? In terms of improvements, I still think we're going to see some big announcements. I think also another mention as well that Gran Turismo does manage sort of a VR mode on console. It's probably the best car VR experience on the PSVR as well, isn't it? I mean, Kevin, you've played the most of that in VR. What were your thoughts? Limited but amazing at the same time.
It's like a teaser, isn't it, of what's to come in the future. So you have, I think it's 2 laps per track, although I think there's only one on the Nürburgring because it's huge. But and there's only one opponent, and of course the opponent is driving very slowly, so you don't actually get a decent race or anything. But it is nice to just sort of sit in the cars, have a look around, give it a little rev, and just think to yourself, right, imagine next generation, this could be absolutely amazing. And you've just got to treat it as a teaser. It is disappointing, of course, the lack of content in the VR section, but like I say, you've just got to imagine the future of Gran Turismo in VR medium, perhaps next generation. And if they can get it right, it's going to be absolutely incredible. And
the immersion is there, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is, and I feel that the handling is better than other games have managed in VR. There's a little bit more depth to the handling, I would say, and it translates turning pretty well. So
I guess you'd expect that, though, since obviously it's a first-party game with Sony.
Exactly.
It does utilize the PSVR hardware very well, much better than other titles we've seen. But like you said, it just feels like a bit of a demo, doesn't it? It's not really a full experience.
No, and they've kind of done a U-turn, haven't they? Because they've responded to fans' outcry and added a single-player campaign. But for me, the strength is very much with the online portion. That's where the game shines. That's where you get the most satisfaction from. Well, personally, I did anyway. I felt that at times you can get such good racing that it's actually quite a hard game to put down. Whereas in the single player campaign, I felt that some tracks, races, I should say, had very obvious rubber banding AI, which was very off-putting. Yeah, and it's a mix. It's like sometimes you get obvious rubber banding, sometimes the AI is too hard, sometimes it's far too easy. And it's a bit of a complicated mess, really, I feel, the single-player campaign. It certainly doesn't capture the essence of old titles.
No.
And that's probably largely due to the fact that you don't have this massive encyclopedia of cars, and you don't have the traditional upgrade system, which was fantastic.
They seem to be straying away from that now. I think Forza is more the game for that sort of experience.
Yeah, Forza gives you that more sort of old school. I can't believe I'm actually saying old school, but the more sort of traditional single player experience. But I just want to see it back with Gran Turismo. But we may have to wait until the PS5 to get GT7, and hopefully it will come with the elements that we know and love, and all the old tracks, all the upgrade system, and the encyclopedia of cards. I want to drive my crappy little K cars, and get all that goodness, and looking forward to that. But for me, overall, GT Sport is a disappointing title in the sense that it doesn't stack up to older Gran Turismo titles, but it certainly is a strong contender among games that have released this year, particularly the online components. Graphically, it's a powerhouse. And of course, we've given the game awards in those categories, so we have recognised its strengths, but it also has a fair amount of weaknesses, I think it's fair to say.
And that's a good point, isn't it? I mean, in terms of various categories of the awards, it has some strengths to it. But as a full package, it doesn't have everything there that it should have. It doesn't have everything there we want.
I think it's important to put into context the fact that we've been waiting 4 years for this, and it is the first Gran Turismo game on PS4. I think if it came out early on in the PS4's life cycle, we might forgive its shortcomings a bit more. But because it is had all this waiting, there's been 4 or 5 Forza titles since the last Gran Turismo game.
Yeah, I think.
I think expectations-wise, I don't think it quite met our full expectations.
No, I mean, even just something like track selection. There's so many awesome classic Gran Turismo tracks you want to drive, and they're not in there, and you really want to drive them, and you want them to be in there. And also, one of my little sort of pet hates is that it doesn't have a forward view cam. So I have to use bumper cam when I play the game because I don't like seeing a second steering wheel on the screen when I'm racing. I find it feels like I'm sitting in the back seat of the car, driving the car. And it doesn't have view options and stuff like that. I think that's just little things like that as well that are in there. I just kind of wish they were in there.
You have games like Project Cars 2 where you can actually adjust the camera to your liking completely.
Exactly. And I think you've got that in games, and you've got that on the PC a lot. And I think it's something that's essential for, especially with wheels being, they're so expensive now. They're a big investment when you invest in your rig. You really do. When you invest that much, you want to be able to have the option to just play the game precisely as you want to. And I think that's an important element as well. So Gran Turismo Sport then, I mean, like you say, number of areas, it's awesome, but it's got a few weaknesses as well, and they've got to be recognised. Talking of a game with a few strengths and weaknesses is Dirt 4. Dirt 4 narrowly made it in here. It was a bit of a toss-up a while ago, and don't forget, a lot of this awards was sort of put together in 2017, and I think Dirt 4, we thought this is going to be the game, and it's, in the off-road capacity, it's up against MXGP3 and WRC7 in particular, and MXGP3, of course, winner of our best bike game. We're just recognizing that. But Dirt 4, it's made it in here to the Racing Game of the Year 2018 selection. But again, it was a game that Dirt 3 loved it. Dirt 4 hasn't lived up to expectations. It doesn't have the range that we expected. Kevin, your thoughts briefly on, as I say, we've been over it before, but we'll go over it again.
Yeah, Dirt 4 was a surprise because they released back-to-back Dirt titles, didn't they, Codemasters, with Dirt Rally and then Dirt 4. So it was unexpected in that sense. But, I was expecting a successor to Dirt 3. And then Codemasters started sharing about their handling, which they've distinctly have two modes. You have the simulation and you have the gamer handling. So, we wasn't quite sure what we was going to get. Was we going to get a Dirt Rally 2 for the simulation handling mode? Was we going to get a traditional Dirt 3 experience with the arcade handling mode? So, we wasn't quite sure what we was going to get. A lot of fans, of course, took that as being a sequel to Dirt Rally, in terms of the simulation handling. Of course, when it did launch, it wasn't quite up to scratch, didn't quite have that depth that, dirt rally fans such as us really enjoyed. So in that sense, it was a disappointment. But you have to say overall, Dirt 4 is still a good title. You know, still lots of fun to play. The handling is still intuitive, whether or not it has the depth you would like or not. You can't deny that it does have that sort of satisfying intuitiveness to it. You know, it does have some strengths. The sound was pretty decent, maybe not quite on par with Dirt Rally, but still decent enough sounds to consider it for an award. And you know, I guess the drawbacks were the visuals. You know, wasn't quite up to par, but it did have some nice elements. Dirt 4 had a reasonable variety of tracks in terms of disciplines, but we just wanted more, didn't we? It just sort of lacking.
Well, you've raised an interesting point here. It's a bit like, you know, you've got Project Cars 2, which aimed high with technology and trying new things. I think Dirt 4, in many respects, has also aimed high in generating these also auto-generated sort of stages. And it's one thing to have a vision; it's another thing to, in terms of execution and bringing it all together. And I think that's one thing that all these games now are very much in a state of evolution, where they've got ideas and perhaps they're in between stages, or they're getting there, or the technology is nearly there but not quite. And it does feel like that with racing games, that the vision is slightly outpacing the technology in some respects. Martin, your thoughts on Dirt 4?
Yeah, like we said in the Off-Road Award, I think it has a bit of a confused identity. It's not Dirt Rally 2, but it's not really a true successor to Dirt 3 either. So it kind of it doesn't really know its audience, I don't think. On the other hand, in its defense, I think it is a sort of more accessible alternative to Dirt Rally and indeed WRC7, which is quite funny actually, because I think that's what I said about WRC5 compared to Dirt Rally. It's a sort of more casual alternative to the hardcore simulation, and now Dirt 4's gone the other way, and Kiloton in a way has overtaken them in terms of pure rally simulation. But on the whole, it is a fun title. It's it has its strengths, certainly. There is a good variety of disciplines, but I just felt that each class wasn't quite fleshed out enough. Rallycross, nowhere near enough circuits. Land Rush, was it like one circuit or one vehicle? I can't remember now.
Land Rush was only 3 locations, and the Rallycross, they only added 2 Rallycross tracks on top of the 3 that was in Dirt Rally. So you only had 5 for an officially licensed Rallycross game. So that was quite surprising. That was,
surprising and quite poor, wasn't it? Again, that's somewhere where Project Cars 2, really took the lead on them, didn't it? There, which was quite surprising.
I think it's like GT Sport. Really, you got to really remember the context of it and the expectations that come with it. Because as a standalone title, it's fine. It's it's good fun. It's a good accessible rally title. But when you compare it to Dirt Rally and WRC7, it doesn't quite deliver on those expectations.
So we get to the end then of our chat, initially going through each game. Kevin, first I'm going to go to you. Talk to us about all the games here. Have a little chat about them. Have a think about what your vote's going to go for this year.
For me, there's 3 titles that I like particularly well. So WRC7, Project Cars 2, and GT Sports. It's a shame that WRC7 was updated and actually lost a bit of that magic that the launch version had. For me, the car's a little bit twitchier, and the force feedback doesn't give you that constant rumble that it did at launch. You didn't quite get the sense of the tyres making their way through the surface. You lose a little bit of detail there with the force feedback. So that's probably just enough to sort of knock it into 3rd place for me. So for me, it has to be between sort of Gran Turismo Sports and Project Cars 2. But having to decide on one, for me, it has to be Project Cars 2, because it has this sort of sandbox element to it where you can, I love getting on Project Cars 2, selecting one of my favorite tracks, utilizing all 4 weather slots. So I'd start typically in the sunshine and end in the sunshine, but then the 2 middle slots I would have weather as random. So I didn't quite know what was coming until my race engineer would chime in during the race and tell me, oh, okay, we've got a downpour coming or whatever. It has that excitement. You didn't quite know what was going to happen. And of course, you can have formation laps as well at the start, which really does add. I mean, a lot of people probably won't, see the fascination of a formation lap. They might find it boring or whatever. But I like that because it gives it more sort of level of authenticity to the race. And when you talk, you have your racing engineer talking to you constantly, your spotter telling you where the cars are on the track. your dynamic time of day and weather. You can select tire compounds on the go. You can you can change your strategy on the go, and it's all these little things that really do give so much to Project Cars 2 that Gran Turismo Sport doesn't have. And even the penalty system I find is pretty decent in Project Cars 2, where you have to give the place back within like 30 seconds. So it has all these elements that just give you a very authentic experience. And of course, the career mode is head and shoulders above, say, Gran Turismo Sports, in the fact that it gives you that sense of being a real racing driver, and you have that progression. You can start in karting or in Ginetta Juniors, which I might add is a lot of fun, and you work your way up if you're so inclined. You do have to unlock the first, I think it's the top 2 or 3 tiers, so you will have to have some, you are locked out of some content, which is perhaps unusual, because they didn't do it in Project Cars 1. You could go in and do whatever you wanted, but so in that sense you had to unlock some of the top tier stuff, which I didn't quite agree with. But on the whole, some of the disciplines are a bit poor. I mean, karting, for example, hasn't moved on, and it's still very disappointing. But you have to look at it as an overall package. And for me, Project Cars 2, it just has that wonderful sandbox element to it. You can do what you want when you want. And particularly a highlight for me is multi-class racing. I love choosing the sort of lower powered cars and then seeing these Le Mans cars, burn past you, and as they spit flames in your face, and particularly if it's nighttime, it's particularly daunting, but also thrilling at the same time. It gives you that feeling of being in a real race that other titles in this list can't quite stack up to. So for me, Game of the Year, although it has its faults, it has a number of bugs. As an overall package, I get the most out of Project Cars 2.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. So that's a vote for Project Cars 2. Martin, on to you.
Yeah, my vote overall though goes to Project Cars 2. As a package, it's completely unrivaled. It has by far the best track selection of any licensed racing game. For motorsport fans, there's a lot of iconic racetracks that just aren't normally represented in modern racing games, but they're very well replicated in Project Cars 2. Great car selection as well. Double the amount of cars that we saw last time. With what we're also introducing new disciplines. We have the new Rallycross mode, which was some of the most fun I had actually in any racing game last year. Just sliding the cars around the corners was just so satisfying. It really captured the power of those machines as well. And like we said, better than Dirt 4 as well in terms of its Rallycross content. I love its customizability. I could just jump into any track I want and apply all the different weather conditions. I think it's, as well, for sure, it presents a really good challenge as well, because you've got the realistic handling, and then when you introduce the weather effects and the effect it has on the racing line, is profound. So in terms of capturing that pure, exciting motorsport experience, there's no equal to Project Cars 2. For moving the genre forward, I would say Project Cars 2.
So that's another vote then for Project Cars 2, Martin. And so, well, now it's on to me then to talk about the year's racing games. And looking at the collection here, there's a couple of games actually. I mean, the winner of our best indie game this year, Red Out Lightspeed Edition, I absolutely love it. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, again, they're a developer who, took the criticism that I had for the game, and they listened to it and they improved upon it, and they made the game better. And when they launched it on console, it was a better game. I don't know how much influence we have when we make these comments, but I know developers listen and they do take it on board. And those that do always end up improving the title in some way. And I think that when we look at the range here of titles, you've got F1 2017 is a great Formula One game. It was a big surprise just in terms of the package that supported it. I was really impressed with that. Mario Kart, I've played it on a limited amount, but I've played it and I think I was blown away by the whole package, really. The graphics, the solidity, the way it looked, especially as Martin has pointed out on the small screen, staggering. In fact, for me, it's funny, but F1 and Mario Kart, for different reasons, are two of the best games of the year, and they're really great. When it came to my personal enjoyment, really it was WRC7 and Gran Turismo Sport are two of the games that I probably played the most. I really thoroughly enjoyed WRC7, but since they altered the handling on it, I've not enjoyed it as much, and I've not found a sweet spot with my wheel and my handling since. I've never been as quick and as comfortable since they've changed the handling on it. But having said that, I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was, and it's a huge step forward. Gran Turismo is a game I've been quite critical with, or about in the past, but I confess that I had enormous enjoyment playing it. It was the cars were fun. They handled, as I say, with the controller. There was a stability to it, a consistency, and it was very polished throughout. Really sort of nice experience, but just not enough depth there. There just wasn't enough to the game to make it the one for me in that sense. And then when you talk about Project Cars 2, Project Cars 2 is a huge package, and on paper, I've talked about this all year. On paper, clear winner, Project Cars 2. It really has everything in it. And when it was released last year, I was really disappointed with some of the elements that either weren't implemented knowingly or weren't weren't done properly. And I think after Project Cars 1 having all the bugs at launch, you would think that Project Cars 2 would have to be rock solid, but no, it was kicked out the door for whatever reason, and it didn't do them or any good really in that sense. But having said that, I recognize that Project Cars 1 furthered the industry in terms of the game. And when we look at this as a big award, we're looking at not just a great game, but no game here, as Martin's pointed out, is perfect. There's not a game on this list. I mean, I speak to friends of mine who play games and they're casual gamers, and they say to me, do you know what? I don't play Project Cars 2. And I say, why? They say, because I play Forza Motorsport. I say, why do you play Forza? Because they say to me, handles well with a controller. And look at me, I'll never play Forza Motorsport with a wheel, because it just doesn't. And with a controller, for me, it's not the same experience. At the same time, if I play Project Cars 2 with a controller, some cars I can get away with, some cars I can't. It's just not enjoyable at all. So it's always sort of twitching from side to side in that sense. They've certainly got a way to go if they're going to catch Gran Turismo, and they do need to sort of recognize that aspect of it. But credit where it's due. The range of cars is wonderfully curated. The range of environment selection and circuits, wonderfully modeled, wonderfully realized. The Live Track 3.0 is amazing technology. The time of day, the weather, the seasons, the whole scale of the package, the online elements, when they get those all working properly, it will be the best online experience. It will offer the best esports. It will have the best car package. It is furthering the industry in different ways. It is forging forward in ways in which Forza Motorsport isn't, in ways in which Gran Turismo isn't. And that's the problem. And we should never be looking at Forza and Gran Turismo as needing to catch up with features that are in other games. Whatever those games bring in now, they're not going to be leading the way. They're going to be following the way. They're going to be following in the wake of Project Cars. That's where we are right now. And that's what Project Cars have achieved. And for that reason, it's Racing Game of the Year. They've won a couple of categories, great audio, great environment selection. They've been close in a few others. But in terms of overall package, yes, when it comes to the handling, I'm critical of the controller, but I recognize that if you do, in particular, if you have a wheel or even a controller, you can fine tune the game. You can find your sweet spot if you want to invest the time into it. Everything is in there, and the package itself is unrivaled in its depth and in its ambition as well. And for that reason, no matter how much I say to myself, do you know what? I've had more fun playing Gran Turismo from a light-hearted perspective. I recognize what Project Cars 2 has achieved this year. And so that's it then. My vote's Project Cars 2. And the winner of the Team VVV Awards 2018 Racing Game of the Year goes to Project Cars 2. So there you have it. It's been a really interesting year. I think with all of these awards, we've had some very competitive categories, it has to be said. I mean, it's been really difficult finding the winner. I think this year's Racing Game of the Year award has been way more difficult than it should have been. No help from the developers there. My goodness, it certainly is a close selection. And I can tell you that, any number of these titles are definitely worth playing and adding to your collection. Do try and play a wide range of racing games, whether it's arcade or simulation. If you enjoy your motorsport or you enjoy your racing games, we cover it. And I think that's something that we've always tried to do, is look at these objectively and openly, look at the contents of each title, and really try to give you guys that unbiased opinion and that reflective look at everything that's been released in the year. And that's it from me and the guys. I hope you've enjoyed all of the awards across all the categories this year. We've really tried to build it up and really go into in some depth that no other awards goes into the kind of depth we do on the racing gaming genre. and it's something we really want to build upon in the future. I'd like to thank you all for your comments on the various videos, for your support and sharing our content, liking and subscribing. Really appreciate that. It supports what we do, and we'll have more feedback in the coming weeks as well, with interviews with some of the winners, as well as additional features coming up on the channel. But that's it from me and the guys for now. As ever, more soon. The Team VVV Awards 2018, sponsored by Ben Green Racing and Thrustmaster.